Welcome back. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has put a lot of pressure on world economies. These are desperate times calling for desperate actions. And to that effect, the federal government of Nigeria has slashed the 2020 budget by about 312 billion on capital projects. The revised budget has an adjusted oil benchmark of $30 per barrel from the previous $57 per barrel. Similarly, the oil production volume was reduced from 2.18 million barrels per day to 1.7 million barrels per day. In addition, the exchange rate was also adjusted from 305 naira to the dollar to 360 naira to the dollar. Also, the federal government has had to adjust downwards non-oil revenue projections from 6.4 billion naira, to 5.8 trillion, It's actually trillion and not billion. 6.4 trillion naira now to 5.8 trillion, while oil revenue was reviewed downward from 7.67 trillion to 1.44 trillion. Now, that's quite massive and quite understandable when you look at what the current going price is for oil in the international oil market. Now, according to the Minister of Finance, the proposed amended budget will also provide for COVID-19 crisis intervention fund. The budget has been sent to the National Assembly for approval, while the Budget Office is currently working on amendments to the medium-term expenditure framework, that's MTEF 2020 to 2022, and of course, the 2020 Appropriation Act. All right, let's discuss this budget further now. I'm talking about the budget cut. I'm now being joined on the program via Skype by Johnson Chukwu, who is the CEO of Cowrie Asset Management. And of course, that's an investment bank here in Lagos. Mr. Chukwu, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Now, you've seen the budget cut. Just give me your take on it, because the impression I get from looking at it is that the cut is actually not deep enough. And the truth is that you don't know when this COVID-19 pandemic is going to start to abate. So from the court, you get the impression that the government is probably thinking that by next month, the economy will be back to shape. But the truth is that this pandemic could drag on until June. You never can tell.
Yes, I agree with you. The cuts are not big enough. I mean, if you look at the fact that we are just reducing the budget by about 312 billion, when the oil price, the major foreign exchange source has collapsed. The demand for it has collapsed. The price has collapsed. Again, you also look at the current COVID-19 crisis is affecting virtually all aspects of the revenue generation of the government. Tax revenues is going to come down drastically. Customs revenue is going to come down drastically. So if you look at the fact that all the major revenue heads of the government will suffer severe decline in the current fiscal year, to reduce the budget by only 300 billion, for me, was too conservative. Again, granted that they have adjusted the exchange rates, which will partly compensate for the shortfall in foreign exchange earnings. I mean, they moved the exchange rate from 306 to 360 naira to a dollar. So that will serve as some level of cushion in terms of converting whatever is earned from the process of oil sales into naira. But I still believe the cut was a bit timid. They should be more aggressive in cutting the budget, because I don't see, in the first place, if you look at 20 budget as options, they were overly optimistic, even in the absence of the current medical and economic pandemic. So I doubt if they even achieved that budget, assuming that economic environment had remained the same. So that it had been impacted negatively by the COVID-19 pandemic, I believe it becomes very onerous for us to imagine that we will achieve the budget projections. So to cut it by 300 billion, for me, it's far behind or far below what one was expecting.
To be candid, when this whole talk about budget cut actually started, I thought we were going to see a very steep budget cut, but it's quite shocking what we're seeing. But let's look at the projected oil revenue of 1.44 trillion naira from the previous projection of 7.67. Maybe that's not too bad, but the worry is in the non-oil revenue. The government basically cut it from, well, 6.4 trillion now to 5.8 trillion. Do you think we'll be able to pull in that kind of amount of money from the non-oil revenue side?
Yeah, DG, I alluded to that in my earlier statement that the other revenue heads are also going to suffer some severe shortfall. I think a 5.8 projection from non-oil revenue is, like I said, the entire budget projection is overly optimistic. If you plan to generate 5.8 trillion from the non-oil revenue, I think that would be a tall order. In the first place, what are those non-oil revenues? You talk of customs duties, you talk of taxes, and if you look at the reports, global reports from some of the international agencies have indicated that global trade will decline by about 32% in the current year. But beyond that, our ability to sustain importation will be severely constrained by the fact that we are not getting enough crude oil to finance our import business. And remember, as it stands today, a lot of foreign banks are requesting Nigerian banks to cash contracts the letters of credit before they establish them because they are worried that we may get from the foreign reserve to meet our foreign currency obligations. So, in terms of importation, going in the subsequent months, it's going to be very low, and I do not see how customs revenue will be able to meet up with the projections after that revenue head. Then you talk of corporate tax or even petroleum property tax. Corporate tax and property tax will also be impacted by negative economic outlook. So I think, like I said earlier, it is highly optimistic that the government is still projecting a revenue of up to 8 trillion naira and expecting 5.8 trillion to come from non-revenue. I doubt it. Let me remind you of what happened last year. Last year, average crude price was $64 per barrel. And by the end of September, our total federal government revenue was only 2.59 trillion naira as at the end of September. So if you use that as a basis, say, okay, at the end of the year, what could you have achieved? You add another 750 billion. So you get to something like 3.84 trillion naira last year. And that was at the period of Ramadan. So if you achieve 4 trillion naira in 2019, when crude price was $64 per barrel, how would you expect to achieve up to 8 trillion naira in 2020 when the global economy is now in disarray? Oil price has collapsed. Even oil sales, oil volumes are not even there. The demand is not there. We have a lot of unsold cargoes. So I think the government needed to have done more stringent cuts.
Moving away from the budget now, the NNPC says it plans to shut down the 3 refineries that are operational in the country for repairs. And after the repairs, they'll be handed over to private individuals or organizations to run them. I'd like to get your take on that.
For me, I think that's a better option than what we currently have. I mean, the government has consistently tried to run these refineries for donkey years and has failed to achieve optimality in managing those refineries. So if the government thinks they can fix it and hand them over, I mean, fix the refineries and hand them over to private operators to operate and maintain, that may present a slightly better option. But I think they should go the whole hog and dispose of these refineries so that whatever source we can retrieve the disposal of these refineries can be invested elsewhere. And then we should go the full cycle of deregulation of the downstream petroleum industry. So as to encourage private sector invest in the sector and set up refineries. So that way, we will effectively reduce the amount we are spending on importation of refined petroleum products. If we do not go the full hog of deregulation, then we may only end up having the NPC as the importer of petroleum products. And in that instance, we will not achieve the benefit, we will not attract the benefits of a deregulated market because we will continue to import as long as we continue to increase prices. So I think we should go the entire cycle now that it looks like the government has political will, and the crude price also presents a golden opportunity for us to deregulate without impacting negatively on the consumers.
All right. Mr. Johnson Chukwu, thank you very much for your time and contributions as always. Well, we'll take a short break now, and when we come back, we'll still continue the discussion on the COVID-19 pandemic. On DEJI360, we don't just ask the questions. What is wrong with amending the Constitution the way the National Assembly members have been doing it? We seek answers.
Constitution is constituent. Our problem is not lack of laws. Our problem is lack of the willpower to implement our laws.
Answers that provide clarity.
While we negotiate, we should try to make it a point that the girls must be complete.
The clarity you need to make informed judgment so that you can make the right decision and take action. People are saying it is you politicians that are responsible for this, that you are the reason why this is happening.
All these dollars that call themselves governors in this country?
I wish we had people like Tony at the National Assembly.
God forbid that I go to join that ballot.
DEJI360, providing clarity to issues.